We have learned that some FBI counterintelligence agents spent Election Day huddled in a war room looking for fake news.
These types of endeavors end up being fishing expeditions.
The Russia story is a total fabrication.
What's under investigation is Trump campaign conspiracy with the Russian meddling and possible obstruction of justice.
Investigators working for special counsel Robert Mueller have asked the White House for documents related to former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn.
With this much smoke, there's a fire somewhere.
He's had a lapse in judgment here, and it's going to get him in some serious trouble.
And I have this warning for would-be leakers: don't do it.
The leaks are real. You know what they said. You saw it.
Leaks are a bad thing. Leaks are concerning because leaks can often compromise national security.
This nation must end this culture of leaks.
This is New Day Weekend with Victor Blackwell and Christy Paul.
Always so grateful to have you with us, and we want to begin with breaking news this hour. After that national manhunt, a Northwestern University professor and an Oxford University employee had been arrested in California. Across the country here, Professor Wyndham Latham and Andrew Warren are suspects in the stabbing death of a Chicago cosmetologist.
26-year-old Trenton Cornell Durenlow was found dead in Latham, Chicago apartment with multiple stab wounds. That was July 27th. Now, just before his arrest, Latham sent a video to his friends and family, which police say appeared like he was, quote, apologizing for his involvement in the murder. Now, the suspects are awaiting extradition to Illinois. And now to a CNN exclusive, the FBI enters what it calls uncomfortable territory. Sources tell us that dozens of analysts monitored social media accounts on Election Day, tracking the suspected spread of fake news believed to be peddled by Russia in an effort to harm Hillary Clinton. But they risked freedom of speech protections in the process.
This, as the special counsel, for the first time, asks the White House to turn over information related to the Russia hacking of the 2016 election. Now, Robert Mueller is reportedly looking into secret payments ousted National Security Advisor Michael Flynn took from a foreign government while part of the Trump campaign.
Meanwhile, Attorney General Jeff Sessions is promising to shut down leaks by targeting, in part, reporters.
They cannot place lives at risk with impunity. We must balance the press's role with protecting our national security.
AG Sessions is reviewing policies on subpoenaing journalists. It prompted questions if he's considering taking legal action to appease the anger of the president after a couple of really tense weeks.
FBI cyber and counterintelligence analysts were, quote, right on the edge of constitutional legality, unquote, when they monitored Facebook and Twitter accounts for suspected Russia propaganda. Our Pamela Brown is here with CNN's exclusive reporting now. Well, good morning, Victor and Christy. Our team has learned that some FBI counterintelligence agents spent Election Day huddled in a war room looking for fake news. And what they could see was negative stories posted about Hillary Clinton, some having to do with her health, that were fake stories generated from accounts with suspected Russian links. This is according to multiple sources we've spoken with. In fact, the FBI agents could see how the fake news was impacting the conversation online. Now, the idea of monitoring for fake news was certainly uncomfortable and somewhat new territory for the FBI. As one official told me, quote, we were right on the edge of constitutionality because of course, First Amendment protections. But it was something they believed they needed to do because it was important and better understanding how fake news played into this, what role it had, and whether or not anyone in the Trump campaign, in the Trump world, worked with the Russians in this disinformation campaign. And amid all of this, we've learned there was constant coordination between the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, as well as DNI, holding conference calls every 3 hours with the team in the White House to discuss any possible problems. At that time, though, during these conference calls, a big focus was, of course, this notion that the vote could be tampered with, that the machines could be tampered with by hackers. And while the FBI says that didn't happen, there is still this open question of whether the disinformation campaign by the Russians, according to the intelligence community, impacted the outcome of the election. And it's something we frankly may never really know. Victor and Christy?
All right, Pamela, thanks so much. Here to discuss, Errol Louis, CNN political commentator and political anchor for Spectrum News, and Kelly Jane Torrance, deputy editor for the Weekly Standard. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So let's start, Errol, first with this New York Times reporting that the special counsel here, Bob Mueller, is now requesting from the White House documents germane to former NSA Michael Flynn, and specifically going to find out if he received secret payments from the Turkish government. What's the significance here?
Well, the significance here is if you go back, and we have to keep in mind, Victor, it's less than 90 days since the order creating this special counsel went into effect. If you read it, though, he's authorized, the special counsel is, to look into any violation of any federal crime. And it so happens that certain forms of financial dealings overseas, even though it may not directly affect the U.S. government, are federal crimes. And the broad mandate that the special prosecutor has to look into this, to figure out what other crimes might have been committed along the way, what it means is that they're going to keep pulling on this string. They're going to find out more and more about possible kickbacks, possible money laundering, possible other federal offenses that really will sort of push this investigation forward.
So, Kelly, you've heard the criticisms from some Republicans saying that Bob Mueller is going beyond his charge here, going beyond the mandate of this investigation.
Yeah, and, maybe he is. It's quite possible. But, to that I would say, well, if nobody did anything wrong, they wouldn't have anything to worry about. That's the problem. When you have a special counsel appointed, that person has a pretty, wide berth to take a look at things. And he can look at any evidence of any crimes he finds in the course of his investigation. And if while investigating possible ties between Russia and the Trump campaign, he finds evidence of other crimes, he can't ignore those. And we wouldn't want him to ignore those. So, if Michael Flynn has done nothing wrong, then he has nothing to worry about. And if he has done something wrong, then I certainly hope that law enforcement is going to take a serious look at that and investigate it and find out if there was a crime, and if so, indict him for it.
All right, so Errol, let's go to this CNN exclusive reporting. The FBI on election night monitoring social media in efforts of tamping down, at least as best they can, disinformation and fake news. The FBI called this a success. One White House source tells CNN that this was a failure of imagination and that what the Russians did worked. Was this potentially one and done, considering that the current president has really not been committal, well, let's call him non-committal at best, on if Russia really was involved in meddling in the election?
Well, let's put it this way. My sense of it, Victor, my academic background is in political science, and I think that this report and this incident is going to go down in the books, in the history books. I think we're at a watershed moment. You'll see in the future national campaigns having their own war rooms that do this kind of monitoring. I think Congress is going to have to get into this and try and figure out where to put the limits on it. It's a little disturbing that the FBI headquarters was full of dozens, if not hundreds, of people monitoring news reports and trying to figure out what impact it was having on Election Day. They appear to have done it with the best of intentions, according to CNN's reporting, but that's not necessarily good enough. So I think we're at the dawn of a new age about what is possible and what steps have to be taken to safeguard our democracy.
All right, let's bring in Joey Jackson, CNN legal analyst, into this conversation, because what we heard from our reporters who were on this exclusive report, Joey, good morning to you, was that the FBI was uncomfortable with this territory because they were on the edge of First Amendment protections, which even protect fake news. Did they cross that line, and highlight the line for us?
Good morning to you, Victor. Good morning to the panel. I don't believe they did. Let's talk and first address the issues of the First Amendment. Obviously, that's compelling here because you don't want to chill speech in any way. Furthermore, the Constitution protects that. Even fake news, believe it or not, is protected. We are allowed to espouse opinions. We are allowed to deliver information and dialogue in general. And so to those who say that that's dangerous, I would agree. The issue then becomes, how do you counteract that, or what can you do? Should we start placing, for example, a court to determine what's fake and what's not? Should we have a court to determine, what opinions are just and what opinions are unjust, et cetera? And so it is a line. But I think what they were attempting to do, Victor, is to see how far the Russian government was going in the intermeddling, what kind of impact it was having, what information was being disseminated out there, and who, if anyone, was coordinating with them to release that information, which the release in and of itself isn't illegal, but the other collusion issues are. And I think that potentially helps wrap up and tie in that information, which could be helpful to show a motive or otherwise intent to any other interference.
Well, uncomfortable or not, the FBI may find themselves in this territory again as we go into 2018 and 2020. All right, Joey, Kelly Jane, Errol, stay with us. We've got more to talk about.
Particularly tough talk from Attorney General Jeff Sessions, in fact, as the Trump administration vows to crack down on leaks. Will it be enough to get the Attorney General back in the president's good graces?
Plus, 2 terror plots foiled in Australia, including a plan to blow up passenger planes. How officials say ISIS planned to carry out those attacks.
I make it easy to save $600 on car.
The lights are on at the White House, but the president is not there. He is at his resort in New Jersey, and we see here a White House that's going under major renovations during his 17-day vacation. The president will be working from his golf resort. We'll talk about that a little later this morning.
But just a day after the Washington Post published transcripts of President Trump's phone calls with foreign leaders, Jeff Sessions ramping up the Justice Department's efforts now to stop intel leaks.
And Sessions' announcement comes as the Attorney General faces some pretty sharp criticism from the president for his job performance, including Sessions' ability or inability to prevent classified information from being made public. Andy Rose has the story.
Here is what I want to tell every American today. This nation must end this culture of leaks.
In an announcement Friday, Attorney General Jeff Sessions laid out some potentially bold steps to crack down on leaks of classified information to the media. Its first step, targeting the media and how subpoenas are issued to them.
We respect the important role that the press plays and will give them respect, but it is not unlimited.
While leaks of classified information are nothing new, they have been a source of much aggravation for President Donald Trump and his administration since he took office. Trump has repeatedly threatened action against those behind the leaks. Reality Winner, a federal contractor, is the only one so far who has been arrested and accused of doing just that. And Friday's announcement shows the Justice Department is just getting started.
It is important for the American people and those who might be thinking about leaking classified or sensitive information to know that criminals who would illegally use their access to our most sensitive information to endanger our national security are in fact being investigated and will be prosecuted.
I'm Andy Rose reporting.
All right, back with us here, Errol Louis, Kelly Jane Torrance, Joey Jackson. Thank you all for sticking around. Errol, I want to start with you here. Sessions has been called very weak by the president as of late in a tweet regarding intel. Do you get the sense that yesterday his press conference was speaking to an audience of one, or was it speaking to DOJ protocol?
Oh, it was very much speaking to an audience of one. I mean, very noteworthy of all the officials that were standing next to the Attorney General did not include the FBI senior leadership. And, you know, that's in part because if you're serious about it, the FBI is the bureau that has the authority to issue subpoenas and mount the kind of investigations that the Attorney General was talking about. Most of the other officials there cannot do the sorts of things that Sessions was warning he might do. So it sounded to me as if he was speaking to the president, trying to sort of threaten and browbeat the press and sort of warn people that they're really, really serious and they might come after you. Which is very much a tactic that politicians use, and certainly Donald Trump in his commercial life did the same. They would threaten reporters, that threaten to go to your boss, they'll threaten to get you fired and that sort of a thing. Much of that, of course, is really not how this is going to play out. There's a very limited ability that they have to stop people from sharing information.
Speaker Paul Ryan spoke to this speech after it was done yesterday. Let's listen to what he said.
Leaks are a bad thing. Leaks are concerning because leaks can often compromise national security. But that's the problem of the leaker, not the journalist.
Okay, so a little different than what we were hearing, obviously, from AG Sessions. Joey, to you, who does the legal risk fall on? Does it fall on the person who leaks or the journalist who reports?
Good morning, Christy. It really, if precedent is of any value, and of course in law it falls upon the person who gets the classified information and otherwise leaks it. I mean, the press has an obligation, and that obligation is to inform the public. And so historically, there have not been prosecutions in that regard. I'll say this, the best way to go and to deter leakers is to prosecute them. And so to Errol's point, certainly this was speaking to an audience of one, but I also think it could speak to a broader audience, and that is the leakers themselves. And so, in fact, when you make the statement that we're going to come get you, it could have some deterrent value, and people, Christy, who otherwise would get that information and release it might say, let me think again. And as much as I know the president hates this, and I know with that attorney general interview, he wants to appease his boss, and they may come after me. And so the deterrent value is substantial, but I think it mostly deters the people getting and releasing that information, not the fine journalists who have an obligation to give the public information as to what's going on.
Once they get it. Okay. Liz and Kellyanne Conway, in an interview this week, said this. She said, it's easier to figure out who's leaking than the leakers may realize. And then when she was asked if lie detectors will be used to try to determine that in the White House, she said, well, they may not. How likely is that tactic to be employed?
Yeah, this is pretty outrageous, isn't it? If they have to go to that extent, it really says something. And I have to say, I find Jeff Sessions' comments completely outrageous. And, you know, the veiled threat against journalists and the idea that he might go after them is just completely outrageous to me. And, you know, if they're so worried about leaks, maybe they should think about what the source of the problem is. And I think Anthony Scaramucci, the brief tenured White House communications director, said it right himself. He said there are people in this White House that think their job is to save America from this president. And I think perhaps he's right. And they might think, why are people leaking? And maybe it's because they are worried about some of the things going on in the White House. And, you know, if the president doesn't want this information to be leaked, he might think about, why are people leaking it? Why do they think it's important for America to know, for example, just how he spoke to foreign leaders and what he said to foreign leaders? And, you know, they might start looking at themselves a little bit before, you know, giving the entire staff of the White House a lie detector test.
And Errol, to that point, when they talk about where are these leaks coming from, we're only 6 months in, and the leaks have certainly been prevalent. Is there any indication if the White House is looking within its walls, within the West Wing, at any one department, at any one person? What do we know in that regard?
Completely unclear at this point, and we'll see if the Justice Department makes good on the threats that the Attorney General was making publicly yesterday. I mean, look, the reality is there are many, many people. I mean, we all know a lot of folks in the White House press corps, and they have a lot of contacts within that White House. And, you know, there's a certain amount of hypocrisy involved here, I have to say, because there are senior officials, including some of the ones that you've mentioned, who are in the habit of talking with reporters. And they talk on background, they talk off the record, they point you in certain directions, they provide you with certain documents, or they inform you of the existence of certain documents, which a reporter can then turn around and look for. Well, is that a leak? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. There's a lot going on here. And Donald Trump himself, of course, even before being elected president, made extensive use of off-the-record conversations with reporters and sort of provided all kinds of confidential information, not under his own name. So if they want to try and shut all of that down, they are going to repeat what many other administrations have attempted, and all have failed.
Errol Louis, Kelly-Jane Torrance, Joey Jackson, always appreciate your insight. Thank you for being here, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, police are getting some disturbing details out of Australia and terrorist plans to kill. A plot to blow up a passenger plane, plans to release deadly gas in a public place. Up next, details on the foiled terror plot in Australia and the new ways investigators say ISIS is planning to attack.
Also, we're now learning that the FBI monitored social media sites on Election Day last year, what they were looking for, and why the Trump campaign is facing questions about it.